The story is about how 10 suitors, all handsome, fall for one woman who captures all of their hearts. This unconventional tragic novel is set in a fictional world, and the name of this book is Why Did the Duke's Daughter Roll Across the Pumpkin Patch? Our main lead, Daisy, was reincarnated into this world as a lowly commoner. However, her shock was only temporary, as she knows everything that happens in the story, and she felt like she had won the lottery. She thought she could use all her knowledge to buy a house and land and earn money. She was really excited and was planning to live happily ever after she purchased everything. But it was a foolish dream as she didn't have a single penny. She realized that she had to own something to make it grow, and was unhappy with the logic that was applied outside this fictional world. Daisy was doing the daily chores of her house when she noticed some people arriving with a small boy named Polyp. The boy was crying, and when Daisy asked him what was going on, a man stood between them and looked at Daisy. He asked her name, and Polyp suddenly started crying. These men asked Daisy to come with them because Duke Henstone was waiting for her. Daisy was shocked and asked if seriously the Duke was waiting for her. These men then grabbed Daisy and started taking her away. She turned around and asked Polyp to at least tell her what was going on. But Polyp, still crying, said that she should not worry as the Duke was the most noble man in the city. He also told her if she met the Duke, to make sure she set the record straight, as he could never commit a crime. Daisy was trying to understand the situation, but these men took her away, and Daisy was shouting, asking why she was being taken away for something Polyp did. She was thrown inside the chariot and taken away. She sat in the chair, thinking about the appearance of Duke Henstone. She wondered if the Duke's hair was like Pontypool's radiant sun, and his eyes were deep and dark like an endless ocean. His flawless pale skin glowed like New Year's beautiful snow, and his cold and determined character perfectly matched his features. Daisy was thinking all of this because he was portrayed this way. She knew he didn't appear in the story directly, but he was known as the most powerful figure, and Daisy thought that someone like him would never associate himself with commoners like her or Polyp. But there was another reason why she was nervous. Duke Henstone was the father of the female protagonist in the story. They reached the palace, and the man informed the Duke that he had brought Daisy. Daisy took in the sight of the palace. She got on her knees. The Duke asked her to have a seat, but she replied that she would stay standing. The Duke suddenly got to his point and asked her a question. He first told Daisy her age and informed her that she was an orphan with no family and her hometown was unknown. He was reading all of this from a piece of paper. He also told her about the place where she worked, but mentioned that she was fired from that place. When she asked him why she was fired, as that was her only source of income, the Duke threw a necklace and said, "Use this for the month's rent," and asked her if it looked familiar. The Duke informed her that her foolish friend sold it at a jewelry store. She was shocked. The Duke responded that the store owner reported it as stolen, and the Duke stated that he wouldn't tolerate thieves running around freely in his establishment. He also informed her that it turns out Daisy was the one who gave her friend the necklace. He came close to Daisy and asked her where she got this necklace. Daisy was taken away by the Duke's men. Polyp was crying. He was whiny and clingy, mainly harmless but could develop into something worse. Nobody was ready to welcome him, yet he was the first friend Daisy made in this world. Reflecting back to when Polyp came to meet Daisy, he was crying even then. He came running toward her, but she kicked him and told him not to come near. She asked him to tell her what happened from a distance. Polyp informed her that he had to move house with his mother but had no money. No matter how much he tried to scrape and save, it was never enough. He didn't know what to do. His house was now worth less than what he paid for, so he might not get any money back if he sold it. His mother was sick, and he couldn't move because he didn't have the money. Daisy gave it some thought and asked him why he was telling her everything, as she didn't have any money either. Polyp was disappointed and said that if she couldn't help, she could at least say a few kind words to relieve the situation. He mentioned that he was already going through a lot and that it was his mother who was really having a hard time. After a while, Daisy gave him something and told him to stop crying. Polyp asked her what it was. When he opened the box, he found a necklace. He was about to hug Daisy, but she again asked him to stay away. She informed him that she was only going to help him out this once. She said that if anyone suspected them of having this necklace, they might think it was stolen. She warned him not to sell it at a jewelry store. Polyp promised to do whatever Daisy said. Back in the present, he did the exact opposite of what she told him to do. Daisy was on her knees while the Duke informed her about the situation. The Duke mentioned that Polyp said he needed emergency funds to purchase a carriage for his girlfriend. Daisy was disappointed with Polyp. The Duke informed her that these minor details were of no importance to him. He asked her where she got the necklace. Daisy explained that she got it from an auction, saying she had gathered everything she owned to buy it and that it was not illegal. At the auction, goods or properties are sold to the highest bidder. Various auctions were held several times a day, and even ordinary people like Daisy could attend for fun with a small sum of money. Usually, she could only buy small, cheap items, but sometimes she came across wonderful things at a low price. The Duke found it strange, as the previous owner of the necklace had passed away recently. Only a few acquaintances would have known about the auction for the disposal of the deceased's property, which probably took place on short notice. He wondered how a commoner with no connections could stumble upon that auction and coincidentally have her entire savings to buy the necklace. Daisy, with a weak voice, said that she knew everything about this world. The Duke was losing his patience and demanded that she explain everything, or he would throw her in jail. Daisy thought it was better to tell him the truth. She started explaining that Chapter 1 is called All You Need to Know About the World of the Tragic Novel. She also informed him that there were a lot of descriptions about Pietra Henstone, the protagonist of the story. The Duke was shocked. Daisy thought she should have started with a brief synopsis. She decided to tell him everything, including his own secrets and things he himself had forgotten. Daisy revealed that she was reincarnated in this world. The Duke said that this is a world in a book. Daisy informed him that if he was curious about anything, he could ask her. The Duke asked what the title of the book was. She responded that it was Why Did the Duke's Daughter Roll Across the Pumpkin Patch? The Duke wondered why someone would give such a name to a book. Daisy thought to herself that she wanted to keep the title unique. She later informed him that she was the author of Why Did the Duke's Daughter Roll Across the Pumpkin Patch, and that she was the one who chose the title. Daisy started explaining to the Duke everything that had happened to her and the book she was now inside. She also informed him that the book contained the fantasies of 10 friends and was created and written for fun. It is the story of 10 suitors and their unrelenting desires for the female who has captured their hearts. The story was filled with all their hopes and desires. How could she have known that she would be reincarnated into the world she created? She was thinking about how she died, how she lost consciousness from all the smoke, and when she opened her eyes, she was in the novel she wrote with her friends. She wiped her tears and said that was the story of her life. The Duke was a bit shocked and said, "So you are saying that my daughter is the protagonist?" She replied, "Yes." He responded, "My daughter is the female lead." "Well, I am not surprised, but what's a tragic novel?" He was curious to know what happens to Pietra in the tragic novel. Daisy wondered how to explain it to him. How was she supposed to tell him about the story of his daughter's greed and pleasure? Looking at the Duke's face, he seemed very excited, and Daisy thought if she told him the truth, she would be dead for sure. She explained that a tragic novel alludes to devastation and misfortune, and she was not sure how to tell him about this. The Duke responded that he thought it wasn't a happy story. She apologized. He then asked who the male lead was. Daisy had a smile on her face and was excited to tell him about the male characters. The Duke was angry with the male characters. She informed him, "Yes, there are a total of 10. The Duke stood up from his chair and said, "How dare they? It's not enough that they approach my daughter, but they even make her the victim of a tragedy. I can't let that happen. I better nip these 10 suitors in the bud." Daisy was shocked as she knew now the Duke wouldn't let those devils corrupt his daughter. The Duke sounded very serious. Daisy informed him that he still had a long time before that happened. Daisy gave the Duke an idea. Why doesn't he use her to protect his daughter? She informed him that as she was the original author, she could figure things out and change the future. The Duke turned around and smirked, saying, "You will protect Pietra." She said, "Of course," and promised that she could prevent everything that happens in the original story. She also vowed, "I won't let your daughter meet any of them. I will use everything I know to change her fate." The Duke responded, "And if you fail then?" Daisy replied, "Then you can take my life." The Duke responded, "Your life is not more important to me." Suddenly, a maid came and informed him that it was past the promised time. The Duke wondered how he could forget about the time he had to spend with his daughter over something like this. He moved towards the door and told Daisy that if she could protect his daughter, then he would give her a chance to meet Pietra. He informed Daisy that he was only going to give her one chance. The Duke pulled her along to meet Pietra. As they were about to open the door, the Duke informed Daisy that he would introduce her as the new nanny candidate. He also said that this didn't mean he was going to hire her. He informed her that he spoke very politely to everyone in front of his daughter and asked her to get used to it. They went inside, and the Duke opened his arms to greet his daughter Pietra. A small baby came running, calling the Duke daddy, and hugged him. The Duke asked his daughter to meet the new nanny. Daisy wondered if this short, little girl was really Pietra, the female protagonist of the tragic novel. The Duke met his daughter, and Daisy looked at Pietra. For now, she was a small girl. Her hair looked like a chestnut burr or a grassy head doll. Daisy wanted to touch it too, but if she did, she would definitely be punished. She introduced herself to the baby, who had her face buried in her father's chest. Daisy found it very adorable. The Duke asked, "What should we do, Nanny?" as if he was trying to tell her, "Do you really think you'll be able to win my daughter over?" Daisy came close to the little girl, said, "Nice to meet you, my lady," and asked if she could join her tea party. Daisy was thinking about something the Duke didn't know, and she took 2 chocolates from her pocket and showed them to the baby. She remembered that she was the one who put in the most work developing Pietra's character, including her likes, dislikes, colors, and fondness for frogs. She knew everything. Pietra suddenly started liking Daisy, and when asked if she would like to have a tea party with the new nanny candidate, she said yes. They both invited the Duke to join them. The 3 of them were sitting at a table having a tea party. Daisy kept more chocolate cookies and other treats on the table, and Pietra asked if she could eat all of them. She was eating all the chocolates, and Daisy found it very cute. She really wanted to touch the little baby's hair. As they were eating jelly, Daisy talked about the flavors and informed Pietra that if she ate all 3 candles together, she would taste tropical fruits. Pietra was really happy and told her father about the fun she was having. The Duke asked Pietra to thank Daisy for all the delicious treats. He wanted to wrap it up, but Daisy had a different plan. She took a pumpkin candy from her pocket and gave it to Pietra, saying she could eat it tomorrow. Daisy was thinking about Pietra's favorite place in the book, a place that soothed her whenever she was struggling, an endless pumpkin patch. Pietra took the candy, came running towards Daisy, and hugged her. The little baby asked, "Do you like pumpkins as well?" Daisy responded, "Of course, I can't eat properly unless there is a pumpkin dish." Daisy really wanted to touch her hair, but as she raised her arms, Pietra ran away. The Duke picked up his daughter and said he was going to find a nanny she would love. Pietra told him that she liked Daisy. The Duke was confused, and Pietra told him again that she liked Nanny Daisy. After saying this, she ran away. The Duke was angry, and Daisy was blushing. Daisy was happy because she knew that the Duke would do anything his daughter said. So, if Pietra said she liked Nanny Daisy, the Duke had to keep her. The Duke told Daisy that considering what had happened, they should rediscuss some things. Daisy thought he was going to hire her as his daughter's nanny, but he informed her that she would be a fake nanny. They would pretend she was her nanny, but her actual job would be to stop his daughter from meeting male suitors. Daisy thought that with this offer on the table, she should negotiate the salary and everything else. She asked him about the wages, and he turned around, went to his table, and started signing a contract. He said that since they were doing this, why didn't he draft a contract outlining the terms? The first line stated that she would live in the palace, as suitors could come sniffing around while Daisy was absent. Secondly, the Duke offered to give her 10 times her usual wages for each suitor she stopped, and he would pay her weekly. The pay was way more than she used to make annually. She signed the contract and was happy with it. After she signed, the Duke gave her an empty book and told her to write down everything she knew about the suitors. Daisy thought that even though Pirta wouldn't meet the main character until much later in the future, the Duke was already starting to worry. She tried to remember the male leads that she and her friend had created. She knew that the Lord of the Magic Tower and Knight Commander Laerfil's son were also there. He was worried about how the Imperial family could be involved. The real male lead was likely one of these 2, but there were only 5 names mentioned. When he asked Daisy, she informed him that she couldn't remember the other 5 names as they were quite complicated. She said that she would be able to recognize them if she saw them in person. The Duke was not joking around and said that he would host an event tomorrow and invite all the noble families. Daisy asked if there was an event tomorrow. The Duke said that he'd be sending out the invitations right away. When Daisy looked at the time, it was 10 p.m. She thought it was already so late. The next morning, excluding families where the head was absent and couldn't respond, a total of 65 replies were received. The total number of guests, including their companions, was 150. Daisy thought that Duke Henstone was really powerful. A maid came and informed Daisy that her attire was ready. Daisy thought that as she was the fake nanny for the greatest duke in the empire, she should be wearing something cool and going to a fantasy ball. But in reality, she was working as a maid and had a lot of work to do. The Duke informed her that nanas generally don't attend such events, so there was no reason for her to. But as Daisy was being a maid for this party, she would be able to go about the ballroom without arousing suspicion. The Duke also reminded her that she was not the actual nanny. Daisy was not happy with this, and as she was handling many plates and walking around the palace, an old lady called her and asked her to fetch her shawl from the first floor. Suddenly, many people came to Daisy and started ordering champagne or asked her to open the window as someone was feeling warm. She was bombarded with orders, and the Duke was just sitting in a corner, ignoring her. Daisy thought all of this happened because of him. But suddenly she heard someone say that the baby had stopped kicking. Now they should go and greet the Duke. When she turned around, she noticed that the face was recognizable. Daisy and her friends were discussing what color the eyes of a character should be. Her friend replied that if he is a really famous scholar, then he must have red eyes. She was determined that her character must have red eyes. Daisy found one suitor, an absolute genius who only comes along once every few centuries. After the young scholar meets Pirda, he gives up all of his academic success and achievements. However, he hasn't even been born yet. The person Daisy saw was the parent of the suitor. Another tall and muscular man bumped into the lady who was pregnant, and the man said, "Why is there a pregnant woman at this party?" The tall man was Marquis Loebner, whose rank is just below the Duke. He asked his daughter to walk faster because they were late. His daughter asked him, "I hate children, and how could you ask me to be their mother?" The Marquis replied to his daughter, "Who is asking you to be their mother? You can leave the children to the nanny or governess. They grow up on their own." Hidden, Daisy learned that the Duke has been a bachelor for several years and is probably thinking about rearing children. Marquis also informed his daughter that a woman should be concerned about marrying into a good family, and he wanted her to win the Duke's heart. Daisy now gave it a thought and realized who Pirda's mother was. She thought it would be rude to ask the Duke directly. The lady, or the mother of the suitor, was trembling with a bit of pain. Daisy approached her and asked if she needed any help and if she was all right. In her mind, Daisy was thinking that the most important part is that she has finally found the mother of the suitor. Daniel came to them, called them by their names, and asked if they were all right. He also informed them that the Duke had asked him to keep an eye on them since she was with child. He wanted to make sure they were taken care of. The parents of the suitor were really happy and grateful and thought they should go and greet the Duke. By the looks of the father of the suitor, he was handsome, and Daisy thought that if her friend saw his face, she would faint. The couple went to meet the Duke. Daisy was thinking that she should go and report this to the Duke, but someone called her from behind, and she turned around. The man was dead drunk. He asked Daisy if she was new here, and while saying this, he raised his hand and patted her back inappropriately. He asked her if she was happy here. Otherwise, he was ready to make her happy financially, and he asked Daisy to make him happy. Suddenly, she banged his head with a plate. The man got angry, stood up, and started shouting. Suddenly, the Duke came there and asked what the situation was. The man who got hit on his head started saying to the Duke that he was glad he was there and showed him that Daisy hit him on his head. He started shouting that lowlifes like her always show their true nature and asked the Duke to fire her. The Duke listened to this and handed over a heavy plate to Daisy, saying that if she really wanted to make a scene, she should have used this. Daisy was confused, thinking if he really wanted her to smash his head with this heavy thing. The man was angry and said, "What are you doing, sir?" The Duke came near the man and said, "You should watch your mouth, Baron." He also informed him that he would not stand by and watch someone act so rudely towards one of his own people. Daisy was shocked by this and wondered what he meant by "my people." The Duke asked the guards to escort the Baron to his home and said he hoped they wouldn't run into each other again. The man was taken away by the Duke's men. The Marquis came to the Duke and mentioned that he hadn't heard from him in a while. He was pleasantly surprised when the Duke invited him to the party. The Marquis informed the Duke that his daughter had turned 21 and wanted to meet him. Belle introduced herself and expressed her desire to meet the Duke. She wondered how someone could be so beautiful and thought that no one would mind if he had 10 kids. Women would still want him. She boldly asked if she could call him Dane. Her father commented that his daughter was fearless. Belle, confident and accustomed to numerous marriage proposals, found them meaningless now as she had fallen in love at first sight. As she was speaking, the Duke stood up and excused himself, heading to the scene where Daisy had hit a man. After instructing his people to take the man home, Daisy approached the Duke, saying she had something important to tell him. He whispered that he saw her talking with Countess Lapel, and that she wanted to meet in the study room after the party. People overheard this and started murmuring, wondering why they wanted to meet in the study room afterward. Rumors spread throughout the palace, but they didn't care much. However, Daisy didn't want this kind of attention. She left the party, thinking about how massive the palace was and that there was no one to clean it. She also wondered where Pirda was. After getting permission, Daisy went to her room and found her lying on her bed, facing the bed. Daisy found her very adorable. She approached and asked, "Are you upset, my lady?" Pirda replied that she was upset because she couldn't go out. She wanted to play on the second-floor terrace, but her father had told her she couldn't. Daisy asked if she would like to go there now. Pirda asked where, and after a while, Daisy took her to the second-floor terrace. Pirda was happy, feeling like she was having a party in the mirror room above her. The ceiling was made of mirrors. She said she loved it and always wanted to have a party there. She mentioned that it was beautiful at night. Daisy asked how she liked her milk, and Pirda replied, "A little warm." While pouring the milk, Daisy asked, "Did your father not allow you to come out?" She suggested that Pirda should be more persistent next time, sure that the Duke would listen. Pirda replied that her uncle didn't stop her, she just didn't want people trying to touch her hair. Daisy remarked that her hair reminded people of a cute chestnut. But she suddenly stopped and stood up because Pirda had just called the Duke her uncle. Daisy was shocked, wondering how there could be something the author didn't know about. Daisy made Pirda wear a pair of pumpkin-designed pajamas since she liked pumpkins. Pirda mentioned, "I think you understand me a little," then yawned and fell asleep in her bed. Daisy found it very adorable and, being tired from the long day, felt exhausted herself. She had worked much more than she had anticipated and was still in shock, unable to believe that the Duke was her uncle. She remembered the time when she asked Pirda if Duke Henstone was her uncle. Pirda replied yes, and Daisy asked why she called her uncle father. Pirda responded that if she didn't, her uncle would be sad. Daisy pondered who would have thought there were secrets about Pirda's birth that even the writer didn't know. Daisy yawned and murmured that she needed to go and see the Duke, but she fell asleep right there. The Duke came into the room, saw Daisy asleep, and placed a blanket over her. The next morning, Daisy informed the Duke that Countess Lapel's baby would be one of the suitors. The Duke wondered how that could be since the baby wasn't even born yet. Daisy explained that the eldest son of the Lapel family turned out to be a young genius. He would graduate early, become a professor at the age of 20, and return to his alma mater. The Duke, uninterested in his life story, asked how he met Pirda. Daisy replied that he became her private tutor. Although he was younger than her, he was a genius who became a professor at 20. The Duke questioned why the eldest son of the Lapel family needed to work as a private tutor. Daisy mentioned it was to pay for his studies abroad, as the family's financial situation wouldn't improve much in the future. The Duke speculated that Lapel's son would want to study abroad in the future, and Daisy advised him not hiring Lapel's son as Pirda's personal tutor to prevent them from meeting. The Duke insisted he would make that decision himself. Daisy tried to give a better explanation, but the Duke asserted he would make the final decision and began to leave. Suddenly, Daisy remembered learning that the Duke was not Pirda's father and asked him about it. The Duke, shocked, asked how she knew. Daisy replied that Pirda had informed her, adding that he had given Pirda many pieces of paper to read. The Duke approached Daisy and warned that if this information got out, it could be problematic. Daisy promised to keep his secret, emphasizing that whether or not he was Pirda's biological father, the important thing was that he cared for her and loved her the most. The Duke then removed a book from the shelf, revealing a hidden room full of clothes he had bought for Pirda. However, he mentioned that she never allowed anyone to dress her, not even him. Daisy suggested that since Pirda loved to run around, long dresses wouldn't be comfortable. They discussed Pirda's preferences, but Daisy thought the Duke didn't need to tell her much as she already knew how Pirda would succeed later on. The Duke asked Daisy to find out Pirda's favorite color. Finally, Daisy asked the Duke what they should do about the eldest son of Lapel. When Daisy was resting in her room, she felt tired, and her neck was sore from nodding in agreement with the Duke while he showcased his daughter's achievements. Daisy thought that Pirda would be studying for a while, so she decided to take a nap. After a while, she heard some noise from outside and woke up, wondering why it was so noisy. Since the party was over, nothing else should have been planned for the day. She went outside and found a maid standing there. Upon asking, the maid replied that there was a grand formal dinner tonight. They were still clearing up from the previous night, so they were in an emergency situation. The maid also mentioned that the Duke had guests coming tonight, including the Count and his wife. Daisy confirmed if they were the Lapels, and the maid said yes. Daisy thanked the maid and quickly left. She wondered why the Duke had invited them all of a sudden and realized that he would do whatever it took to protect his daughter from suitors. While running towards her room, Daisy thought about what the Duke was plotting and, more importantly, why he hadn't told her about it. She asked about the Duke's whereabouts but learned he had just left. Daisy returned to her room, realizing she had no other choice but to act as a maid to see for herself. She took a tray of food from the kitchen and told the maids she would be helping them. Daisy was amazed by the sight of the food. As she walked towards their room, she wondered what the Duke was up to. She reached the room where the Duke and the Lapels were having dinner. Lapel was having a conversation with the Duke, saying he couldn't understand why the Duke was making such an offer. Daisy overheard this and wanted to know what the offer was. The Duke explained that the reason behind his offer was simple. He had read the research report that Lapel had registered at the Foreign Academy, which was brilliant, the work of a long-time academic. The Duke mentioned he couldn't just stand by and watch such talent go to waste. The Duke then asked Lapel if his offer was not too burdensome, and requested him to consider it. Lapel responded that, to be honest, he had always wanted to be a scholar, but as the head of a household, he was no longer young and had a child on the way. The Duke replied that he understood and would also prioritize his family. Lapel thanked the Duke, saying he never imagined receiving a letter of recommendation for the Tistan Empire Academy. The Duke told him he had high expectations of him, and now that he had accepted, things would move quickly. The Duke also decided to provide relocation costs and housing support so Lapel could start his research as soon as possible. Daisy realized that the Duke was sending them off to a faraway place under this pretext. The Duke also mentioned that the academy was at a considerable distance, but he would do his best to ensure the lady did not experience any discomfort. He would provide the highest class cabin and a professional physician to accompany them on the ship. The Lapels expressed their gratitude all night and left in the carriage ordered by the Duke. Daisy then asked the Duke why he was sending the Lapels abroad. The Duke informed her that he sent them because the Tistan Academy was highly esteemed. The Duke told Daisy that their son would want to study abroad, so he sent them away in advance. This was the Duke's plan to save his daughter from the first suitor they might meet, even though he was not yet born. The Duke did not want to take any chances. Daisy asked the Duke, "Did you move everything from my house?" The Duke replied that she should have already done that. Daisy was thinking that once she was removed from this place, she would go back to her job, and her house was near the restaurant where she worked. The Duke said, "As you mentioned, you are not in a position to pay rent for a place you weren't even staying, so I asked my people to bring your stuff from there." Daisy asked, "What if you kick me out?" The Duke replied, "Why would I do that?" He also mentioned that he wouldn't have called her one of his people if he was going to kick her out easily. The Duke added that now they shared a huge secret, so he wasn't going to let her go easily. After listening to his words, Daisy blushed. She thought that referring to his hired staff as his people was a bad habit of the Duke. Later, Daisy met Hattie, a character who didn't appear in the original book. He informed Daisy that the butler received her things and would bring them right away. Daisy looked at Hattie and thought that he didn't seem like a bad person. She also thought that she might have written this book, but there were so many things she didn't know, and she should be careful. Suddenly, the butler came inside. He was old and looked very frustrated. He threw Daisy's bag on the ground and murmured to himself. Daisy wondered why this man was so angry and thought he could have just told her that her things had arrived. Suddenly, Pirta came out, calling Daisy, and met the old man. The old man started lecturing Pirta, telling her that she should not run in such an unladylike manner. He mentioned that he was disappointed because a noble lady should not roam around like that. He lectured Pirta as if she were an old woman and criticized the trousers she was wearing. Daisy listened to all of this and wondered what the problem was with this old man, as Pirta was still a young child and nobody should be talking to her like that. The butler kept saying that if she continued like this, she might never get married and could still be single in her 30 seconds. This made Daisy very angry. She thought, what the hell is this old man talking about? She wondered how, even though he was a butler, he could be allowed to talk to Pirta in this way. Daisy couldn't control herself any longer and asked the old man what he was talking about. The old man was angry at Daisy and said, "Don't you have any manners on how to speak, even though you are new here?" Daisy replied, "How can I possibly just stand here while you spew nonsense like that?" The old man then turned towards Pirta again and said, "If you don't behave, you will turn into this ignorant woman," which made Daisy even angrier, and she started shouting at the old man for talking nonsense to a small child. The butler assumed, based on Daisy's appearance, that she was a maid. Daisy informed him that she was the nanny, and Pirta confirmed the same. The old butler was shocked to hear that Daisy was the new nanny. He didn't believe her and started questioning her, saying that if she was lying, she'd be fired from the mansion and would never work anywhere else again. Daisy responded that if he didn't believe her, he could ask the Duke himself. She continued, saying that if she got fired, she would make sure the old man got what he deserved. She then told the old butler to listen carefully. First, he should never say anything like that to Lady Pirta again. Second, if he ever disrespected a woman again, she would break both of his legs. And lastly, she asked the butler to get out of her room. The old man shook his head and left the room. Pirta was worried about Daisy, as she saw her angry for the first time. Pirta said it was her fault and apologized. Daisy tried to make her understand that she shouldn't be sorry and shouldn't be scared because her dad was the boss around there. Pirta continued, saying that everyone there said similar things to what the old butler said. They always commented about her clothes and her hair, and if she tried to tell her dad, she never saw those people again. Pirta was worried that if she told her father about this incident, she would not be able to see Daisy ever again. Daisy understood the situation and told Pirta that from now on, if something like this happened again, she should inform Daisy and not her father. Daisy also made sure to reassure her that nothing would happen to Daisy if she did so. They both made a promise to each other. Pirta was happy and allowed Daisy to touch her hair. To Pirta, Daisy was very awesome and kind. Daisy was glad that Pirda was feeling better. Pirda and Daisy developed a friendship. The Duke used to hand over Pirda to Daisy while he was busy with his own work. After a few days, Pirda held Daisy's hand and took her to a place she wanted to show her. It was outside the palace, and it was a tree, but it was discolored. Daisy and Pirda approached the tree. Daisy noticed it grew noticeably darker the closer they got. She observed that the roots seemed rotten. Pirda explained that her mother had planted the tree a long time ago, thinking it would look nice. Daisy understood why they kept it despite its condition. Pirda was cheerful around the tree, and Daisy grasped that Pirda wanted to show it to her because it held significance for her. Pirda offered Daisy a flower and started running around. They began playing hide and seek, but when Daisy went to find Pirda, she heard the girl scream. These were swarming and attacking her. Daisy scooped Pirda up and ran back to the palace as quickly as she could. The doctor arrived and informed the Duke that Pirda, fortunately, hadn't been stung by any poisonous bees and would be all right. He dismissed the doctor once his examination was complete. Filled with tears, Daisy apologized to the Duke, acknowledging she should have been more watchful while looking after Pirda. The Duke saw Daisy trembling. He asked her to remove her shawl. Though it wasn't even cold, she continued to tremble when she took it off. He noticed a wound on her shoulder. The Duke instructed Hattie to call the doctor back. Later, while Daisy rested in her room, the Duke visited. He told her not to get up and brought her medicine. He applied it to her shoulder himself. While doing so, the Duke apologized that Daisy got hurt because of his daughter. The doctor had informed the Duke that the injury could have been much worse and expressed surprise that Daisy hadn't fainted. He also mentioned the pain must have been excruciating and wasn't sure how she managed to return to the mansion in that state. The Duke tucked the blanket around Daisy and assured her he would keep the doctor on standby until she recovered. As he was leaving the room, the Duke instructed Hattie to call the gardeners. The next morning, Pirda went to the same place and noticed that her favorite tree, which her mom had planted, was no longer there. She started crying very loudly. Her dad tried to explain that he had no choice, and it was dangerous. She was badly hurt yesterday because of it. Pirda cried, insisting that it was not at all dangerous. The Duke told her that Nanny Daisy was in a lot of pain because of the bees, and she should check her shoulder. Pirda looked at Daisy with tears in her eyes, ran to her, and apologized for causing her pain. Daisy asked Pirda to stop crying or else she would wear herself out. The Duke then suggested it was time for breakfast, but Pirda turned to him and said, "Uncle, I hate you." The Duke was shocked, as Pirda used to call him father, but today she was so angry that she called him uncle. After a while, Daisy went to Pirda's room with some snacks to cheer her up. But the tree was very special to Pirda. Yesterday, when she told Daisy about the tree, Daisy understood that Pirda held onto it because she couldn't remember her mother. Perhaps it was the same for the Duke. He had tried his best to keep that tree alive, but after yesterday's incident, they had to cut it down. Daisy tried to cheer Pirda up, but Pirda hugged her and said, "You are all I have got now." The Duke was in a serious situation as his beloved Pirda now kept referring to him as her uncle. This continued for a while, and she remained angry with him. He tried to make amends, but nothing worked. The next day, Pirda avoided speaking to the Duke all day. After some time, Daisy placed Pirda on the Duke's lap. The Duke tried to explain that he was sorry for what he did and should have discussed it with her. He also made her understand that he couldn't let her or Nanny Daisy get hurt again and told her that she was more important to him than the tree. The Duke promised that they could go and buy a bigger and better tree afterward from the market and plant it in the same spot. But Pirda replied that no matter how pretty the new tree would be, it wouldn't be the same. She said he didn't understand anything and hugged Daisy again. Daisy thought that if only she hadn't messed up yesterday, they wouldn't be in this situation. Later that night, Daisy went to the Duke's room to check on him. She also had an idea. She informed the Duke that Pirda would have an easier time letting go if she could focus on something else. The Duke was confused. Daisy explained that she had a friend she wanted to introduce to Pirda. This friend lived nearby and was the same age as Pirda. She was a supporting female character in the book. Daisy informed the Duke that she wanted a friend to meet Pirda. This friend lived nearby, was the same age as Pirda, and was a supporting female character in the book. Confused, the Duke listened as Daisy explained that if Pirda spent time with this friend, she might be able to overcome her attachment to her mother more easily. She added that this character was the only person in the original story that Pirda wanted to get close to, but, unfortunately, they were unable to become friends. The Duke asked for the reason, and Daisy informed him that a suitor's obsession with Pirda drove a wedge between the two women. The Duke concluded that if they could bring the girls together now and give them space, there should be no problems, resolving the issue with the suitor as well, killing two birds with one stone. The Duke was worried about Pirta not having any friends, even when she grew older. He asked Daisy what would happen if they went along with her suggestion, and the girls didn't become friends, leaving his daughter even more heartbroken. Daisy reassured the Duke that she was confident they would get close because the girl was clever and bright, with a reserved and timid side that would be drawn to Pirta's more outgoing and lively personality. Daisy also mentioned that Pirta's birthday was coming up. When the Duke asked for the child's name, Daisy informed him she was the second daughter of Marquis Francois, Lady Rhodizon. The next morning, the Duke was planning to invite another girl Pirta's age. Hattie mentioned that he thought the Duke would never invite any outsider to his daughter's birthday before she became an adult, and assumed that the Duke was being overprotective. Hattie left, and Pirta came to the scene, asking Daisy where Hattie was going. Daisy thought she shouldn't tell her about the friend since it wasn't certain yet, so she just told Pirta that Hattie had some errands and would be back soon. Pirta said she didn't care if he came late, as she only needed Daisy. The Duke also wanted a hug and asked for one from his daughter. She stared at him and turned away, a straight rejection. Later, the Duke and Daisy discussed how Pirta was still angry with him. Daisy suggested that he walk with her in the pumpkin field at night and talk about the pumpkin palace to start mending their relationship. But the Duke was thinking that maybe it was a mistake to have her call him dad in the first place. Daisy was thinking that the more estranged they became, the more she had to do in between. Pirta wasn't even looking at the Duke, so all he could do was trail after his daughter, who was always following Daisy. Her job was to report everything that the little chestnut said back to the Duke, the things she wanted to do. The Duke wanted to know all of it. Daisy was wondering how long she would be able to keep it up. After some time, Daisy came to the Duke and whispered something she had learned while working as a babysitter. The next morning at the breakfast table, Pirta came and asked Daisy if she had slept well. There was a method Daisy had learned from another mother in her previous life to smooth things over between her daughter and husband. She told the child, "Look at mommy holding daddy. Do you want to hold daddy's hand too?" She mentioned that it didn't even take a day for her daughter to forgive her husband, so Daisy was now staring at the Duke's hand. Daisy told Pirta to say good morning to her father while holding his hand. The Duke was blushing, and so was Daisy. Pirta looked at them and said good morning without a smile. She then jumped from her chair and went somewhere, leaving Daisy wondering when she should let go of the Duke's hand. The next morning, Pirta was crying as Daisy was preparing to leave. Pirta insisted that Daisy not go anywhere, grabbing her bag. The Duke told his daughter that this was not proper behavior. The Duke and Daisy were trying to leave for the Francois house to invite their daughter to Pirta's birthday party, and had hoped to do so before Pirta woke up. But they were too late. Daisy promised Pirta that she would be back as soon as possible. Pirta understood, knowing Daisy never lied, and let them leave. They reached the Francois house, where the couple welcomed the Duke and Daisy. Marquis Francois apologized for missing the previous party due to a family obligation and hoped the Duke understood. They asked why the Duke visited so early and remarked on his female companion. The Duke explained that they were there to invite their child to his daughter's birthday party. Daisy handed over the invitation, and Francois was amazed. They had always sent birthday gifts for the Duke's daughter but had never received an invitation before. Francois accepted the invitation and asked if the Duke would like to meet their sons, Pat and Rentley. The sons introduced themselves, and the Francois parents spoke highly of them, but the Duke interrupted, stating he was there to see their daughter. The Duke also mentioned he wanted to invite their second daughter, Lady Rhodizon, to the party. He added that he would be grateful if the other children could attend, but as this was the first party with a friend invitation, they wanted to keep it small. He hoped they understood. The Francois had hoped to become in-laws by introducing their sons to the Duke, but those hopes were dashed when the Duke expressed interest in only their daughter attending. They called for Rhodizon. The Duke met their daughter and invited her to Pirta's birthday party, mentioning she was the only invited guest. Daisy assured Rhodizon that they would become friends quickly and promised there would be lots of delicious treats and activities. When they returned to the palace, Pirta was delighted to see Daisy and gave her a kiss for keeping her promise. The Duke felt left out, so Daisy asked Pirta to give her father a kiss as well. Pirta, however, asked Daisy to kiss him first. For the sake of reconciliation, Daisy decided she had no choice and kissed the Duke on the cheek. Both felt awkward, and their cheeks turned red. The next morning, while Daisy, the Duke, and Pirta were having breakfast, Pirta kept asking about the invited guest. She wanted to know who it was. The Duke informed her that Lady Rhodizon, the daughter of Marquis Francois, who was the same age as her, was coming to meet her. Daisy added that it would be wonderful for Pirta to have a friend. The Duke mentioned that this would be the first time Pirta would have a friend over for her birthday. Pirta was really happy but then started worrying about what they would do when they met for the first time. Daisy reassured Pirta that they would become friends quickly. She also mentioned that her dad went out of his way to invite Rhodazin because he wanted Pirta to have a great time. The Duke continued, saying it would be the best party ever and guaranteed it. He told his daughter that they would get new tables, chairs, and tableware for the event. They were also going to hire the most famous patissier to bake the cake. Pirta asked if she could watch them bake the cake, and the Duke agreed, adding that they would also get a pair of pumpkin pants tailored for the occasion in all the colors she wanted. He also mentioned that they would decorate the hall with hundreds of pumpkin dolls. Pirta said she would think about it, but deep down, everyone knew she was excited. Hattie came and called the Duke away. As he was leaving, Pirta grabbed his leg but then ran and hid behind Daisy. Pirta explained that she confused him with Daisy for a second. Pirta then hugged Daisy and asked her to pass it along to her dad. Daisy tried to make her understand that her dad would appreciate the hug more if she gave it herself. Pirta said it was still hard for her and insisted that Daisy hug her dad on her behalf. Daisy reached out to the Duke and conveyed Pirta's hug. The Duke then hugged Daisy and they both felt awkward. The Duke mentioned that Daisy could say no if she didn't want to, but Daisy said it wasn't that she didn't want to, it was just an awkward situation, and she left. That night, while making Pirta's bed, Daisy wondered how she always managed to do the wrong things at the wrong time. Pirta mentioned she had fun that day, but Daisy urged her to make up with her dad as he was really sad. Pirta decided to make up with her dad and asked Daisy to go with her to his room. When they entered, Pirta ran to her dad, hugged him, and apologized for making him sad. The Duke also apologized for cutting down the tree she loved. The Duke asked if he could tuck her in that night, but Pirta had a different plan. She said, since they had made up, they should all sleep together. The Duke and Daisy were shocked. The Duke and Daisy couldn't deny Pirta's request. They all ended up sharing the same bed. The Duke faced the wall beside him while Daisy slept with Pirta. They tried to avoid the situation by saying the bed would be too small for the three of them, but Pirta was determined and teary-eyed, so they couldn't refuse. After a while, Pirta asked her father why he was facing the wall and urged him to turn around. The Duke suggested they sleep, but Pirta became sad again. Daisy reassured the Duke, saying it was fine for him to turn around. Pirta then proposed they talk until they fell asleep. The Duke asked her to sleep, his hand reaching over Daisy to touch his daughter. After a moment, Pirta fell asleep. When she was completely asleep, Daisy asked the Duke if he was still awake. The Duke apologized for his daughter causing Daisy so much trouble. Daisy assured him it was fine. After some time, Daisy asked the Duke about the tree that Pirta loved so much and who Pirta's mother was. She added that if the question was too personal, he could avoid it, and she apologized for being intrusive. The Duke said it was fine and explained that Pirta was his older sister's daughter. Their parents passed away when they were young, and all their relatives were vying for the family assets. The Duke and his sister only had each other to rely on. She was 7 years older than him and officially inherited her place as the head of the household when she turned 20. She tried to take over the parenting role, and the Duke resisted. He mentioned that he used to cause more trouble than Pirta does now and was ungrateful to his sister. He owed a lot to her but couldn't repay her as she was no longer in this world. Daisy realized why he loved and cared for Pirta so much. The Duke said that taking care of Pirta was the favor his sister asked of him. The Duke thanked Daisy for everything she was doing. Initially, he believed that his daughter and he would be okay on their own. But after meeting Daisy, he realized he was mistaken. Daisy had longed for the Duke to recognize her efforts, but she never imagined her heart would beat so fast. She didn't know what to say. The Duke mentioned that if she felt uncomfortable, he would get up from the bed, but she shouldn't move, as Pirta might wake up. Daisy wondered if she turned around now, what expression would the Duke have? Would it be as cold and stern as usual, or would his face be flushed like hers? After a while, they both sat outside in the hall. Hattie came by and asked if they were unwell because they looked really tired. He mentioned they both seemed to be experiencing the same symptoms of parental fatigue syndrome. While they were talking, the Duke's eyes wandered to an alcohol bottle on the shelf, one he hadn't seen before. Hattie mentioned it was a gift from Baron Solfino when he attended the last party. He added that sometimes it's nice to have some quiet adult time to distress. It sounded like a good plan to the Duke and Daisy, so they started drinking. They were chatting when suddenly Pirta came looking for them. She wanted the Duke and Daisy to sleep with her again. The Duke said he wouldn't be sleeping tonight because he had to work all night, but Pirta told her dad that adults need their sleep too. The Duke, touched by her words, found it really cute and grabbed his daughter in his arms. Pirta mentioned he smelled like alcohol, and when Daisy grabbed her too, she had the same complaint. Pirta suggested that since they weren't sleeping, they should play a game. The Duke initially denied the request, but he couldn't say no to his beloved daughter, so he agreed. Pyrrha ran to bring the thread and cards. When she came back, she showed Daisy the thread game and asked her to solve it. Daisy understood it was a mix of cat's cradle and undoing knots. Pyrrha said that since Daisy won, she had to pick a penalty card. The penalty was for Pyrrha to kiss Daisy on the cheek. Daisy lost several times, and Pyrrha teased her for being bad at the game. The Duke mocked Daisy, saying that even though it was his first time playing, he would still be better than her. They started a playful competition. Hattie took Pyrrha to make sure she was put to bed and then left. The Duke and Daisy continued playing the game. At one point, a penalty card came up requiring a kiss on the other person's lips. Both Daisy and the Duke were shocked when they saw the card. With emotions running high and a penalty card demanding a kiss on the lips, will Daisy and the Duke face their true feelings? Their playful competition has taken a serious turn, leaving both shocked and uncertain about what happens next. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching.